It has nothing to do with that. I made money in spite of myself. And I think I made money because I didn't care. I didn't care whether it was a hit or not a hit. I wanted to make this movie as a movie. And that's the thing that they won't do. And that they can't do it. It's not in their constitution to do that. I have a fiduciary duty to come up with a thing. I got it 10% a year, my stockholders. That's why I would never go public. And that's why I said, I'm not going to be beholden to anybody. And that's why even now with the company, when I sold it, one of the reasons I sold it was I was starting to make movies that were more personal and were obviously losing a lot of money. And I said, I really can't do this much more because the company will be dragged down. And I had 2,000 employees. So I had people to think about. So I said, best way to handle this is to sell it and then take the money, put it in a bank account. I call it my yacht because a lot of my friends have yachts. I said, I'm not going to buy a yacht, but I'll take the money that I would use to have a yacht and I'll put it in a bank account and I will use that to make movies that I know are experimental, that I have no way of knowing whether they'll work or not, but I want to see if they work. And it means I don't have to show them to an audience. I don't have to have people.
So when are we going to see that movie?
You're not. You might. But you're in a world now where everything is, well, first of all, those movies, they don't make money. And you can't, like Red Tail's perfect example. Not only does it not make money, you can't get anybody to distribute it. You can't get anybody to put any advertising money behind it. You can't, so it loses money no matter how you do it. So why in the world go through all that, get bad reviews, get all the, crazy people yelling and screaming at you? Why not just make the movie for yourself and your friends?
And that's where you are in your life today.
Yeah, I'm doing what I wanted to do back when I started, but I'm going to learn things, and the things I learn, possibly I'll pass on to other friends of mine and other people who are directors, to say, I didn't know you could do that. Because that's what directors do. They learn from what all their peers are doing. I'm doing this and I'm doing... You sort of see how they manipulate film, the visual image, moving image, and do things that have never been done before. And so that's what I want to do. Because in the movie business, you cannot take a risk. You cannot do something that doesn't work. You don't get a second chance. I've taken second chances, but I've just taken to polish them. But at the same time, you can't, there's no experimenting. There's no experimenting in movies. What you do is every day on the set, what you're doing has to be right. If it's not right, and you make the mistake enough, the film will fail. If the film fails, then the people lose their money, and and you usually don't get another job.
But are you telling me, and is this what you believe today, that in your life's experience, you know how to make a popular movie, but that's just not what you want to do at this stage in your life?
Yeah. Why would I?
You don't need the money.
I don't need the money. My interests have shifted to more mature things. I mean, I did the kids thing. I did it. To me, it's 6 films, and
why do you say the kids thing?
Well, it is a kids film. Adults like it. It's for everybody, obviously. But the kinds of movies I'm going to make now are much more demanding of an audience, and most of the audience won't have anything to do with it. And it's on subject matter that most people don't want to see movies about. So, but I do, and I've made movies for me that I wanted to see, but I knew what they were. I said, okay, this is this movie, this is this movie, this is this movie. And in producing films, where I was able to get other people to put their money in, studios, I wouldn't take it from real people, I'd only take it from corporations. So, it's a little bit of the Robin Hood thing.
Yes, I know. Let me just talk about the upcoming Star Wars, The Force Awakens. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's, I made the decision to sell the company, Star Wars. I made that decision because I looked at the future, I looked at the fact that I was going to have a baby, I looked at the fact that I was married, and I looked at the fact that I wanted to build a museum, and I looked at the fact that I wanted to make experimental films. So my life was going on a different track. I noticed the last few movies that I'd made were costing the company a lot of money, and I didn't think that was fair to the people that worked there or the company, and so I had made a decision to move ahead on the next Star Wars series, and we were starting to do that.
So you were starting to make the next Star Wars.
Yeah.
You as director, filmmaker.
So, and we were working with a writer. It wasn't quite working out, but I was also, I was also stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy. And so what happened was Disney said, or Bob Iger said, if you really want to sell your company, if you're thinking about selling it, because we were talking about retirement and what are you going to do after all this kind of stuff. And he said, well, if you really want to sell it, we're very interested. So that started that ball rolling. And I knew from, and I had the story treatments or, outlines, and we were working on scripts. And so I sold it. But I knew when I sold it, I said, I've tried to make movies where I step away, to sort of Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And after about a couple of weeks, I knew I couldn't do that. I had to stand over the shoulder of the director, help him, whisper in his ear constantly, no, do this, do that, and be there to help guide it. And it was much harder than if I just directed it myself.
J.J. Abrams?
J.J. Abrams. He's a good director, and he's a good friend, and all this sort of thing. But he's also a top director, his own company, and all this other stuff. And Disney, who was a little nervous. One of the issues was the first three movies had all kinds of issues. They looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans. So I said, all I wanted to do was tell a story of what happened. It started here and it went there, and it's all about generations, and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers, and it's a family soap opera. Ultimately. We call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera. And it's all about family problems and it's not about spaceships. So they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing, and so I decided, fine, but basically I'm not going to try to, they weren't that keen to have me involved anyway, but at the same time I said, I'm not going to, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble, because they're not going to do what I want them to do. So, and I don't have the control to do that anymore, and all I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I will go my way and I'll let them go their way. And it really does come down to a simple rule of life, which is when you break up with somebody, the first rule is no phone calls. The second rule, you don't go over to their house and drive by to see what they're doing.
Yes.
The third one is you don't show up at their coffee shop or the things where you're going to run it. You just say, no, gone, history, I'm moving forward. Because every time you do, and we all learn this from experience, every time you do something like that, you're opening the wound again. And it just makes it harder for you. You have to put it behind you, and it's a very, very, very hard thing to do. But you have to just cut it off and say, okay, end the ball game. I got to move on. And everything in your body says, don't, you can't. And these are my kids. So
all those Star Wars films.
All the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are. I loved them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
and
sell
you sold them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
okay, but having said all that, and having talked to you for the last, and known you for a while, and admired you, it must hurt you.
Well,
it's your family. It's the last story. It's your story.
But
it's
in the end,
you.
But I knew there's 3 more stories, and I knew that was going to probably take, to do it right would take about 10 years. And I said, I'm 70. I don't know whether I'll be here when I'm 80. Every 10 years the odds get less. And so I said, and I'm not ready to do that because I want to do these other things. So I have to make the decision on my own that it's time for me to move on. So it wasn't like they were taken away from me or they were and they felt they knew, they wanted to do a retro movie. I don't like that. Every movie I worked very hard to make them different. I make them completely different with, different planets, with different spaceships, with different, to make it new.
So are you at peace with this?
Yeah.
As much as you can be?
Yeah. No, I said, look, I'm fine. Then you get to the thing, which is another thing that I'd been through. Fortunately, I'm old enough to have been through all this stuff before. And that one is, I had to do it. And then you do end up with this thing, which is, you've got to live with it, and people are going to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. It's like talking about your divorce or something. It's awkward, but it's not painful.
Do you have within you something that's a series of small personal films, you've said? That's what you want to do. No more great Star Wars kind of adventure for George Lucas.
No.
That's over.
Yeah. These are little tiny movies that are experimental. They aren't using the same structure. I'm going back to where American Graffiti was, or THX, where I've completely changed the way you tell a story in using cinema. It's back. I produced a few films that were like this, but they weren't like what I would do. But they were using the visual style rather than the book.
Here's what's exciting, George. What's exciting is that all of the stuff that's within you that made all of this, whether it's THX or American Graffiti or Star Wars or all that you contributed to Indiana Jones, it's all within you. It's who you are, and you can apply that in any way. Because that, in the end, is what you brought. It is your ideas and your insight is what you brought to film.
And at the same time, I've been fascinated with the medium, and I've been fascinated with the true nature of the medium, which is very different. It's been used more as a recording medium than as a art form unto itself. And that's where the kind of movies that I made that are sort of, they call them tone poems. But in the beginning, like in Russia, this was a whole movement of how do you tell visual stories, basically without dialogue, without all the things that you use to tell a story, and you just use the film itself. It's kind of esoteric. I'm going to try to take it. It hasn't come much further in 100 years. I'm going to try to take it into something that is more emotionally powerful than most of the stuff we've done up to this point.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.